Digital systems have disrupted our entire world. For all of us, these digital interactions have just become a natural part of our day-to-day experience. But we're still hitting a paper wall when it comes time to signing on the dotted line. Why is that? Why are we using technologies like paper and pen from a century or two ago in a world that's gone entirely digital? I'm John Pereira. I'm the Vice President of Adobe EchoSign, and I'm joined by noted author and business advisor Jeffrey Moore, and we're going to talk about the world of electronic signatures and how they play a big role in this digital revolution. So thank you for joining us, Jeff.
It's a pleasure to be here, John.
So tell us, let's just kick things off. How are digital systems disrupting the world of business?
Well, you know, the first decade of this century, we disrupted the consumer world and we created a very rich consumer experience, but largely it wasn't getting into the enterprise. And then in this decade, both because of millennials and just because of the value of digital systems, we've said we've got to bring that into the enterprise architecture. It's very disruptive. The enterprise was built around systems of record, and these are more systems of engagement. They're very different design goals, and getting them together that's the big challenge of the decade. We're going mobile with digital systems. If you remember 20 years ago, we did it with the PC. Now it's the iPad and the smartphone, and it's changing virtually every interaction that you have with a customer or a partner or a supplier.
In a lot of your writing and discussions that you give, you talk about systems of engagement. What do you mean by that, and what's its impact on IT?
Yeah, this is to me where the future of IT is right now at a crossroads. Most of my career, we were building systems of record. They were database systems, very carefully architected, very reliable, very secure, in data centers. They were hard to use. They were hard to maintain, but that's what IT was. What happened in the first decade of this century was this incredible digital revolution with smartphones and then with the iPad has created a totally different view of IT. We call them systems of engagement because they're user-centric and it's all about the user experience. And as a consumption vehicle, it's wildly popular. Now what's happened is that the enterprise has said, we need to bring this technology into our business flow. It's obviously very powerful as a mobile technology. Our executives can use it, our sales reps can use it, et cetera. But we need to onboard it onto a systems of record infrastructure. That's a challenge, and that's taking time. So the IT organization is prioritizing the things that they're working on, and I think maybe e-signatures is on the list, but it may not have gotten to the top of the list, because at the top of the list they may still be worrying about security or reliability.
So why do you think people are still using fax machines, scanners, pen and paper, overnight envelopes for these types of business processes like contracts?
Well, it's inertia. I mean, basically, because it worked. And there was a time, remember, when FedEx said positively overnight, and that was like a miracle. It is clearly out of sync with the digital infrastructure. And so as soon as the enterprise, I think as the enterprise gets more comfortable integrating the consumer infrastructure to an enterprise standard, this thing will become highly pervasive very rapidly.
Are there any big barriers to adoption on this front that you're aware of?
It's just inertia. I spend a lot of my time with the technology adoption world, and really, Newton has got a very powerful law which says an object at rest wants to stay at rest, and an object in motion wants to stay in motion. People like to do what they did the last year, and so it's just literally habit and going forward.
So in your opinion, where are we on the technology adoption life cycle for e-signatures, and why is that?
Well, you and I were at a recent conference and we actually polled the audience, so it's kind of fun. Most of the audience agreed we were past the early adopter stage, but not completely into the mainstream market. So we call that crossing the chasm. And in that part of the stage, the use cases that drive them are the ones that are a little bit more urgent. So we talked about some in sales and some in HR, and we talked about some in procurement. When conservatives or pragmatists want to kind of put on the brakes, they often will say, I'm worried about security or I'm worried about compliance. I'm particularly interested on this compliance side. Where are we with the legal side of e-signatures?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one that we get certainly a lot of the time. Are e-signatures valid and legal, and will they hold up in a court of law? Well, there's a lot of good news here. In 1999, the United States passed the EchoSign Act, and it's now legal in every single 50 states across the U.S. More than 30 countries around the world have embraced electronic signatures. That number is increasing every single month. And so for me, this is a question of getting the word out. And I think, in fact, there's an opportunity for the legal function to actually act more as an accelerator of the business and these new systems of engagement rather than saying, hey, I'm not so sure about this?
Yeah, it absolutely is imperative that the legal counsel at least know the law. I think isn't that kind of a rule?
You advise a lot of companies. What adoption strategy should IT consider?
Well, you know, when you're looking at systems of engagement, one of the things we're trying to get the IT folks is to sit down with the line of business and say, look, there's this great technology out there. If we don't do it pervasively, immediately, fine. But isn't there some moment of engagement in our business cycle which we could change our effectiveness in that moment by introducing digital technology? And so I think it's a very powerful moment of engagement for the enterprise to say, we need to step up and we need to step up now.
You sometimes talk about the concept of no more stupid stuff. What do you mean by that?
Well, okay, so today, if you don't have electronic signatures, and by the way, I'm on a board of directors, this happened to me the other day, we want a unanimous consent. I got that message by email. It said, would you please print out the document? So I printed out the document. Would you now please sign the document? Would you now please fax it to me? So I said, well, I'm not going to fax it. I will scan it, and I will email it back to you. So that's what I mean by stupid stuff. Okay. So that you can store it digitally at your end.
What about, let's take sort of a functional view on this. HR, salespeople, people in procurement. You know, what's their role in this sort of systems of engagement model?
Well, in the HR world, at least in this valley, you're in a war for talent. A lot of that talent is younger talent. Now, you know, a larger corporation may be doing hundreds, thousands of hires a year. If the process is, I'm going to print out a letter, I'm going to send it to a millennial, I'm going to ask them to sign it and find a fax machine, which they're not even quite sure what that means anymore, you're going to lose a lot of the war for talent. And so just not only from a point of view of efficiency, but from a point of view of just engaging with the talent in the texture of the world that they want, it's really important. On the sales side, it's just crazy. I mean, if you're going to print out and put it into the mail, you're creating somewhere between 2 days and 2 weeks of cycle time for an order that could be, you know, closed in 20 minutes. And so in that kind of a model, it just doesn't make any sense. So it's an efficiency issue, but it's also a risk. When you expose your sales cycle to competitive risk, that's just crazy. So there's a bunch of stuff going on right now. It really is stupid the way we're doing it, and the sooner we get off it, really the better.
So what's the next big disruption? Once systems of engagement are fully implemented and we live in this fully user-centric world?
Well, you know, the key to that world is our mobile devices that allow people to be their full self and be fully present in any situation. In business situations, I think what you're going to see is we're going to be able to take all the technologies that are in these consumer devices and integrate them into business process flows. You think about a claims adjuster who might take a photograph of a car, get a signature from a person who's going to repair the car, get the claimant to agree to a payment. I mean, all this kind of, if we can just do it in the moment, present with each other, as opposed to continually have to ping pong back to systems, it's going to change the whole flow of business. Right now, we focus a lot on the transaction because, frankly, you have to orchestrate a lot of things to make the transaction happen. If you take that friction out of the system, there's more time to focus on the relationship. And also, systems of engagement make it much easier to collaborate and interact with each other. So I think you're going to see a more collaborative work style. I think there's going to be, and we're seeing this in a number of parts of our culture right now, where people are coming together to solve problems collaboratively. And I think it's because the digital infrastructure is removing a bunch of the stuff that kind of kept us at arm's length from each other.
We were talking a little bit earlier about, you know, what's the role of PDF in all of this? What's the role of companies like Adobe?
Yeah, I want to put you on the spot here, because if you look at the PDF infrastructure and you look at the EchoSign, you're saying, wow, this is a marriage made in heaven. So what are your plans for integrating them? Where are you in that journey, and where might you go next?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it turns out that, you know, we're also in the business of helping companies not do any more stupid stuff. And as soon as you move to the world of electronic signatures, people are reducing costs. They're taking friction out of the business, they're increasing compliance, and they're just doing business more digitally. Now, it turns out that 99.999% of everything in the world that's signed electronically, to your point, is a PDF, which is a field that Adobe has done a lot of pioneering and innovation in. So one of the things that we've done is just with the Adobe Reader, which is now on almost 1 billion devices around the earth, we've embedded EchoSign technologies right there. So anybody that opens up a PDF from Adobe, you click on the button that says sign, you're up and running, and you can have a fully compliant, legal, secure signature for the 21st century. But you know, we're just getting started. There's so much more to do here in the arena of touch and identity and workflow capabilities. So there's some really exciting things coming down the roadmap from us as
But
well.
I have to tell you something, that what you just described is the end of stupid stuff if we all could just click on the sign button.
Well, Jeffrey, thank you so much for joining us and talking about the world of systems of engagement and electronic signatures.
It's always a pleasure to engage with Adobe.
Well, you know, this is a really important moment of time where Adobe is going to spend a lot of time and energy and innovation on the digital document approach and how do we keep business completely electronic and enable these systems of engagement that we've been talking about. Thank you for joining us. It's been a delight, and we're looking ahead to the next 12 months.